But we believe these are the same people who are terrorizing people, even the tourists within this area.
Wameandika kwamba tumeingia kwa nyumba ya Nadia, na ndani ya nyumba ya Nadia tumepata guruneti, tumepata simu.
Terror suspect gunned down in Mombasa as his relatives cry foul.
I take 2 steps. After that kuingia nikasikia mlipuko.
And after the siege, we begin KTN's special coverage of Westgate a year later. Plus, court takes the referendum campaign to Kawangware. And monies to the county. Why governors insist on a 45% allocation.
KTN Weekend Prime with Yvonne Okwara.
A very good evening to you this 14th day of September 2014. We hope you had a good weekend and are ready to start the week. We have a great bulletin lined up for you. Before I get to the top story, just want to give you a sneak peek of what's coming up on Checkpoint. We'll be talking about what happened in Migori. Was it political intolerance or was it freedom of expression? Keep your thoughts coming in as we have that discussion a little later on in this bulletin. But the highlight of our bulletin tonight is some of the pictures that you've seen in our highlights. 7 days from now, we will be commemorating the first year after the Westgate siege, the worst terrorist attack on Kenyan soil, proving to be the first major test for President Uhuru Kenyatta. We kick off our coverage of that today, culminating in Bottom Line on Saturday and Sunday. Throughout the week, we'll be speaking to the heroes, the survivors, the victims, those who are still trying to make it in terms of just trying to understand what happened. And finally, an analysis and a way forward as we take a look at a dark point in the country's history. But how do we move forward from that? All of that begins right now on After the Siege. Westgate, of course, still fresh in our minds, but Kenya was not new to terrorism. I wanted to take a look at the chronology of events of terror in the country. And it started way back in 1980, and this is when the Norfolk Hotel was bombed. In that attack, 20 were killed, 80 were injured. What happened? An Arab group claiming responsibility. It was in retaliation for Kenya allowing the Israeli troops to refuel in the capital. This was during the Entebbe crisis. So starting way back in 1980. And we fast forward to a number of years later in 1998. That at the time was considered the biggest terrorist attack on Kenyan soil. The US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania were bombed. We know those figures and those statistics. Over 200 people were killed. 4,000 were wounded and their lives were changed forever. As you can see there, there's that plaque that exists right outside of the Memorial Park with the names of each of those victims etched there for us to remember. At this time, Osama bin Laden, of course, taking responsibility. And this is when he really came to the world's attention for the first time in this attack. Let's go now to 2002. And at this point, we know of the missile attack that took place on the Israeli plane. It missed, but at the same time that that was happening, the Paradise Hotel was bombed. 10 Kenyans lost their lives. And as you can see, the numbers continue to rise and the frequency also continued to increase. Now, from 2002, what marked a an increase in the number of terrorist attacks in Kenya was, of course, Operation Linda Inchi, which was our incursion into Somalia to keep our borders secure and keep terrorists from coming in. And that is why we want to now chronicle the time from 2011 right up to date. And this is what happened, of course, once the Kenyan troops went in. We saw a number of attacks that took place. Responsibility was claimed by Al-Shabaab, of course, due to our presence in Somalia. There were very many small-scale grenade attacks. None of the big ones that we saw in 98 and, of course, in 1980 and 2002 before that. And they went just about everywhere. The list is too many to enumerate, but they attacked churches, bars, bus stops, military sites, shopping centers around Nairobi, and the death toll, of course, continued to rise. The first one that we all remember was on October 24th, 2011 at Mwaura's bar, when a suspect, of course, hurled a grenade at the bar. It was at around 1:15 in the morning. Now, from all of that, then, comes to what we are talking about today, which is the September 21st, 2013 attack. It was a 4-day siege on the Westgate Mall. The country held its collective breath. 67 dead, hundreds injured. The numbers continue to still be disputed. But, of course, that is where we are at now. 7 days from today, the country will be commemorating that one. We'll be taking a look at how this has affected our security operations. So, as you can see, Kenya not new to terror. And of course, even after this, there were some more attacks that took place early this year, and it continues. And the fight against terror, of course, continues right after this. And that is where we start off with our first story tonight. That fight we're telling you about. Police in Mombasa have killed a man they say is a terror suspect. The man was killed in an early morning raid at his house in Kibokoni area, where a grenade was also allegedly found. But the victim's family and human rights activists have criticized what they have interpreted as another extrajudicial killing, which disregarded the rule of law. And as Ferdinand Omondi reports, this latest event is casting a shadow on a police service that is looking increasingly trigger-happy.
The
agony of Nadia Ahmed Mohammed was palpable, a pain few can understand. On the dawn of Sunday, police raided her home in the Floringi area of Kibokoni and shot her 26-year-old son dead as she watched. According to police, the deceased was a terror suspect.
We had an intelligence information that there are criminals. Part of them is a terrorist group who have been terrorizing people here in Mombasa.
Kitur added that they recovered a hand grenade in the house and are still in pursuit of a second suspect who escaped. He said they have intelligence that revealed the suspect had returned from Somalia, where he had received training in extremism.
Tried to throw a grenade to our officers. That is the time our officers responded, and you have seen. He was also shot.
But the family of the deceased strongly denies the allegations. They charged that the police in fact have harassed them, taken their mugshots, confiscated their phones and now killed one of them. They also claim they were coerced to sign an acknowledgement that the grenade was indeed recovered from the house.
Wameandika kwamba tumeingia kwa nyumba ya Nadia na ndani ya nyumba ya Nadia tumepata guruneti, tumepata simu tatu na ID yangu na ID ya mamangu. Mimi nikamwambia mimi siwezi kusaini karatasi kwa sababu mimi sina guruneti.
Now, human rights organizations and a member of parliament want the police involved investigated and charged in what they say will put a stop to extrajudicial killings and wanton harassment of families.
Vita vya ugaidi haimaanishi kwa kila mtu lazima uliwe. Huyu kijana wamemshika ukamtia pingu wakamua mbele ya mamake.
We can say now without a shred of a doubt that there is a policy of assassinating suspects, particularly terror suspects in Kenya. Police are doing this with impunity, knowing that those in authority will actually side with them.
Why are we paying judges salaries? You know, why are we paying judicial staff salaries if someone feels that, you know, I'm going to be the lawyer, prosecutor, I'm going to be the judge, and I'm going to be the executioner?
An existing report shows that in Kenya, one is 5 times more likely to be shot by a police officer than by a robber. Most of these shootings have been questioned, but in Kenya, the state is more likely to protect the police officer in question without conducting an open and thorough investigation, regardless of the scenario. The latest killing comes only 2 days after the exhumation of Kwekwe Mwandaza, a 14-year-old girl who was also shot by police in her house in what they claimed was self-defense. An autopsy confirmed later she died of a head injury from a high-velocity firearm, which discounted an earlier police report which suggested cardiac arrest as cause of death. Both cases have strong suggestions of merciless police execution, which critics now say are carried out with the impunity of men and women who feel protected by masters in high office.
It is counterproductive, and you are actually encouraging extremism and radicalization here at the coast.
Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mombasa.
Which way in the fight against terror? That continues to be the controversial question, and your views keep coming in as we commemorate 1 year on after Westgate. The hashtag we're using on Twitter is After the Siege. Here is one already. Does extrajudicial killing solve the terror scourge? Uganda just arrested suspects while Kenya shoots to kill. While we grapple with how we're going to fight terrorism, let's take you to some who survived a terrorist attack. Now, when Susan Njuguna woke up on the morning of September 21st, 2013, her intuition told her to stay at home, but she still left her residence anyway. And just as she arrived at her workplace, on the 2nd floor of Westgate Mall, the unimaginable happened. She and others were caught up in one of the worst tragedies in Kenyan history. Here is a story now of 3 women at 3 different stages of healing 1 year after the Westgate tragedy.
It's the same job in the same company, maybe even with the same clients. But in reality, life will never be the same again for Susan Njuguna. Her scars are less obvious than most survivors. The last time Susan used her voice. It will take more than a year before she can recall the memories of Westgate without shedding a tear. Though they both hide their scars well, Rachel Wamboy's is more evident.
I thought that the salon was not a safer place for me. I decided to run at the 2nd floor, parking inside the mall. That's when I was thrown a grenade on my feet, both of them. My feet My right feet had to be smashed off from the fingers going up.
Rachel is ahead of Susan in the sense that she is slowly coming to terms with what happened on the 21st of September 2013, affording a smile now and again during the interview.
I was really crying for water at that time, for him to help me with water. Then he was telling me, Mama, tulia maji nakuja. So I didn't know whom he was at first. Then when I was at Mata, when he was being brought at the KTN, I was telling my parents and my brother that this is the man who saved me. And that was the time they told me this is the director for Red Cross. After I saw my foot were thrown the grenade, I just told myself, God forgive them because they don't know what they're doing.
Because, you know, I have two choices. I can either be angry and miserable and continue to hurt and carry the people who shot me on my back every single day, or I can forgive them and leave them behind. And I can heal better, and I have chosen to heal and to get better.
A radio presenter, Shamim, has found healing in talking about her ordeal. It has enabled her to laugh at situations that would have otherwise been a nuisance.
I've got so much shrapnel when I go through these, you know, metal detectors. It starts beeping. But I'm a very grateful human being.
The Westgate tragedy affected almost every Kenyan, especially those living in Nairobi. And even though it has been referred to as Kenya's 9/11, it was 4 days of hell, but at the same time, it was 4 days of unity. And maybe it is this strength in unity that is one of the reasons why those who came out of that building that day are called survivors and not victims. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
And just picking up on that, perhaps the person who's just sent this tweet, as Catherine said, should call herself a survivor, not a victim. Natalia Stephanie, you say, as a victim in both September attacks, that's Westgate in Paradise, it's a time of double healing for me. Keep your thoughts coming in. The hashtag is after the siege. Let's stay with matters terror. Now, U.S. Embassy in Uganda's capital, Kampala, is reporting that Ugandan security forces stopped a cell of Somalia's Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab insurgents, apparently planning for an imminent attack. Uganda's police spokesman Fred Enanga said his forces had made arrests but gave no details of how many people had been detained. Ugandan authorities reported the discovery of an Al-Shabaab terrorist cell in Kampala, adding that there are members of the cell still at large. Citizens were urged to stay at home on Saturday. Security forces have boosted patrols around major sites in the capital, including Entebbe International Airport. Now, last Monday, the U.S. Embassy in Kampala warned that Al-Shabaab insurgents may try to exact revenge for a U.S. airstrike that killed the militant group's commander. During the World Cup final 4 years ago, Al-Shabaab insurgents killed at least 76 people after setting off explosions that ripped through 2 restaurants in Kampala. That coverage continues throughout this week. Stay tuned to KTN for more on that. Let's move to matters politics now. CORD is accusing the Jubilee administration of regional and gender imbalance when it comes to state appointments. The coalition further dismissed opinion polls by Infotrack that suggests the coalition's Okoa Kenya is unpopular. KTN's Ian Wafula attended a CORD rally in Kawangware, where the coalition also launched its signature collection drive.
And the drive for the referendum signatures continues. This time, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy took their campaigns to yet another home turf within the capital, the Great North constituency. It is here that Area Member of Parliament, Simba Arati, put pen to paper in support for the referendum in presence of CORD leader Raila Odinga and Kakamega County Senator Boni Halwale.
Leo hii, mnajua Uhuru si anaishi kwa constituency yetu? Si mnajua yuko kwa constituency yetu? Na kama nimesaini si anafaa saini hii referendum? Nairobi peke yake tunataka hiyo 1.5 million.
Watu wengi walikufa Westgate, mpaka wa leo hatujui chenye kilifanyika. Rais wetu anatujali ama hatujali? Anatujali ama hatujali? Hiyo sisi tumekataa. Tunataka security Kenya, ndio investors wafanye nini? Wakuje watuletee kazi.
Habari kamili ndio hii. Habari ambayo imetoka katika ikulu ya kiongozi ya CORD na imetoka katika makao makuu ya CORD ya kwamba nchi yetu ya Kenya itakuwa na referendum mwezi wa 8 mwaka ujao, wapende wasipende. Nimesikia leo ya kwamba Bwana Bugwa, gavana wa Nakuru, ametangaza ya kwamba amepiga marufuku mambo ya referendum Nakuru. Tuende Nakuru ama situende? Wangapo umesema tuende Nakuru?
But amidst recognizable confidence, opinion polls recently released by Infotrak suggest a rather unpopular referendum campaign amongst members of the public. Sampling 1,000 people spread across 25 counties, 45.7% were in support of the Okoa Kenya initiative, majority of them stating that it would reduce the cost of living, while 54.3% opposed the referendum, arguing that the constitution needs more time for implementation.
Opinion poll sasa wananchi wa Kenya waje nimwambie where we are. Where we are, tuko na 47 counties. Katika hizo 47 counties, 24 ni za upinzani, CORD. All the governors of upinzani 24 wako na sisi katika Okoa Kenya.
The coalition's drive for a referendum has further been termed as a waste of time and resources. Moreover, as a scheme to seek relevance, claims refuted by party leader Raila Odinga.
Wengine wanasema ndio hii ni kuokoa mtu. Kuokoa Raila. Raila hataki kuokoa Mungu. Raila tena ameokoka.
Even as drum rolls continue, the Jubilee administration has maintained that it does not have money for a referendum. Despite opinion polls, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy CORD says they are confident that they will succeed in their referendum. This as they continue to gun up towards their target of collecting 5 million signatures across the country. Ian Wafula, KTN, Nairobi.
Right, so what would happen if governors got the 45% they are seeking? Would that improve services to the ordinary Kenyan? Experts in budget procedures say the move could either empower the counties or starve the national government. KTN's Asha Mwelu reports.
The relentless push by governors to increase county funding to at least 45% has gripped the entire country's attention.
We are on course on pesa mashinani. That is for sure.
The debate has focused a lot on how much counties should receive and little on what would change for the ordinary Kenyan if governors were to get more funding.
Are counties getting enough revenues for the functions that they're supposed to carry out? And when you ask that question, you also need to ask the question, does national government have enough to carry out its functions?
To say that now you want to increase the allocation means that you have to increase the functions which have been devolved, because it's a trade-off. If a function was previously being done by the national government, what you then therefore need to do is devolve that function so that resources can therefore follow that function.
Counties are in charge of a number of services including health, water, early childhood education and agriculture. National government has its own functions, including education, security, immigration, and infrastructure, to name a few. Although some governors are performing some national functions, such as security, it's unclear whether the county bosses want additional functions.
First of all, we need to know exactly 45% of what. And then I think we need to be very careful that we look at the national functions and the county functions and try to understand how much do they actually cost, and are we being reasonable. I think that 45% of something may be feasible, but 45% of current revenues would undermine national functions.
The amendment that they are basically calling for when they tell us that they want to increase the allocation, at its basic basic analysis, the thing that they're arguing is we need to devolve more functions to county governments.
I think the governors are mostly talking about what's called the equitable share, the total amount of money which is given to counties unconditionally to do whatever they want. I think that's not the right way to think about this. A lot of the money that is trapped in different places needs to be thought about a little bit more carefully. For example, we have money for regional functions, things like regional hospitals.
The Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution thinks governors can get more funds without a constitutional referendum. Governors have argued that they should be receiving at least 15% of the latest audited and approved revenue accounts.
So they tell me that the latest approved accounts of Parliament are 2010, which of course then keeps, according to them, keeps the figure lower than if we were talking about the latest approved accounts being, say, last year. I agree. But then what is the solution? The solution must surely be for all of us to tell Parliament, you have a constitutional obligation to approve these accounts to the latest so that that can be used to divide the national revenue.
The debate on how much counties should receive could easily take different perspectives. What experts agree on, however, is that governors need to clarify whether they are seeking 45% of the latest audited accounts, and perhaps most important, that Kenyans need to know how county and national functions would be affected by this move. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
It's all about functions and funds, and it's all about money for development and also for recurrent expenditure. Salaries is a big thing. The wage bill, which is why that biometric registration exercise that began at the beginning of this month is continuing, and it will be launched in the counties. And for that, we have James Ongwae, thank you very much, Governor of Kisii County, to just tell us about this idea of the wage bill and knowing just how many workers and all of this tying into the money that is available at the counties and for what purpose. We thank you for joining us this evening. Tell us about the launch of this enumeration exercise, or the biometric registration that's taking place in the counties. How will it benefit the counties better to know how many people you have?
Thank you very much, Vion. As you know, as a country, we got a new constitution. That constitution ensured that out of the 44 ministries that we had, we now have 18 ministries. It also ensured that we created 47 county governments. What that meant was that you had staff that were in national government and staff that are now in county governments. And the rationalization and realignment of those staff had not taken place. So the biometric exercise that we are talking about is actually beyond biometric. It also has to do with the realignment of functions, both at the national and county levels. It has to do with a determination of the capacities that exist at the county levels and at the national levels, so that the whole issue, because the whole argument here is about service delivery to the Kenyan people, and that is what the exercise is all about. Now, this exercise is an exercise that we agreed on as part of the summit meeting that was held in June last year. We all agreed, the governors and the president agreed that we are going to realign our structures at the county and national level.
Okay.
The president indicated at the national level that he would ensure that the national government is able to realign its functions.
All right. I'd like to just step in a moment. So it'll be good for service delivery, which is what you're saying, which is what devolution is all about.
Yes.
Can you tell us the situation that persists in Kisii County now? Do you know how many workers you have right now on your payroll? How many do you think are ghost workers, even as the exercise begins later this month?
Thank you very much. In Kisii County, we now know how many workers that we have, because I undertook a ghost cleansing exercise. In fact, I removed about 140 people from the payroll who didn't come for the payroll cleansing exercise, and but a number of other counties have probably not done it. But for me, I did it.
How are you able to ascertain that they're ghost workers? Because they did not show up.
They did not show up.
What you call the cleansing exercise?
Yes, they did not show up. And we gave them time, we gave them a month to show up. We wrote letters and everything, they didn't show up. And some of them were also working in other counties, but were being paid from Kisii County. Others had long retired, but were still reflected in the payroll. So all in all, we removed, I think, I I'm thinking it was between 140 and 170 staff.
All right, let's address some of the concerns that have been raised. Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli saying this is an exercise to victimize people and the fear that people working in the counties now could lose their jobs. Could you address that?
I would address that by indicating that within the context of the institutional framework that we put in place for managing this exercise, we have a national steering committee that is co-chaired by the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and the Chairman of the Council of Governors. Within that intergovernmental steering committee, the Union for Civil Servants is actually represented. I also sit in that committee. And therefore, what I'm trying to tell you is that we are working closely with the Union for Civil Servants.
But you say that, but they have also raised their concerns. And Kinuthia Wamangi was also here just before this exercise was launched. He said everyone is working in tandem, but then we hear voices of dissent.
Now, there are no voices of dissent from the Union of Kenya Civil Servants. We also, incidentally, have been meeting with the Secretary General, MP Roba, Mheshimiwa Roba, who is the Secretary General of the former officers who are working in local authorities when the local authorities, of course, with the devolution system disappeared from the scene. But there are those workers, and the Secretary General is also part of this. And even on Friday, we had a meeting, and your officers, some of the officers from your own newspapers were there. They saw the chairman of the Kenya Union of Civil Servants and Mheshimiwa Roba in the meeting with the Council of Governors, including officers from the Ministry of Devolution and Transitional Authority.
Okay, all right, so all in tandem. And we will wait to see if we hear any voices of dissent that continue to come up in the course of this one and to see just how that will be addressed. Finally, Bwana Governor, just as we have this discussion, we had a story by Asha Mwilu, our reporter, that just prefaced this discussion, and is talking about more money to the counties. And of course, the idea is that much of it is being spent on recurrent expenditure, salaries, which is probably where this registration exercise will help to weed out those who don't deserve the money, but also a great chunk of it for development. 45% to the counties. What would that mean for you in your county?
For me, in my own county, I'll tell you, if I got that money, it means that I'm going to do more roads. It means that I'm going to improve health services. For instance, I'll tell you in Kisii, when I went there, Kisii didn't have the Kisii hospital, which is the biggest hospital in that particular area, which actually serves Kisii, Nyamira, even parts of Migori and other areas, because it's a level 5 hospital. It did not have a lot of machines like the ones for diagnostics. It didn't have the other major machines which we've been able to put in place. The mortuary was a 20-unit mortuary. We are putting in place a 100-unit mortuary.
All right, so that's what you've done with the money given so far.
Yeah, we are.
What would you do with more money? Should it come to 45%?
We are putting in place a 150-bed in that hospital. We will improve the other outlying hospital so that we decongest this hospital, so that it can become much more of a referral type of unit.
Okay.
For the roads, we will be able to improve the roads at the local level so that they are motorable throughout the year. In other counties, like in Kisii, it rains throughout the year.
Would it starve the national government if you got 45%?
It would not starve the national government, because the 45% that we are asking for is actually, we have already done our mathematics. The 45% that we are asking for is money that is at the moment in various ministries where they are performing functions which are already devolved under Schedule 4. If you go to the Ministry of Health, you will find they have over 20 billion shillings performing functions that should be performed at the local level. If you go to Ministry of Water, you will find they have over 20 million shillings performing functions like cattle, like water pans and so on.
So that money should come to the counties.
So basically, even the 45% that we are talking about, we are not taking anything from the national government. We are telling the national government, perform the functions that you are given by Schedule 4 of the Constitution.
Okay.
If you do so and you give us the money that you put in the budget, even for this financial year, just the money that they have put there is more than 45%.
Okay, and we have to leave it at that. We thank you for your time today. Of course, that process of registration of county workers begins on the 22nd of September. Is that not so?
Yes.
We thank you so much, Governor of Kisii County, Honorable James Ongwae, and we thank him for being with us this evening. We'll continue to see how that pans out in the weeks ahead. Let's move now to Eco Journal. Now, in the heart of Lake Turkana is a little-known island known as Longech. Here, fishing is the main economic activity. However, due to overfishing and the use of unsustainable fishing methods on the island's beaches, the lake had in the past realized a decline in the number of fish. Now, in this week's episode of Eco Journal, Sharon Momanyi tells us how proper fishing methods acquired by fishermen in Longech Island has yielded better harvest.
Hot and very dry is what marks the semi-arid climate in Turkana, and one that accounts for the perennial drought and poverty in the county. But like an oasis in the desert stands Lake Turkana, the world's largest permanent desert lake. From Kalokol town, a 30-minute ride on a motorboat gets us to little-known Longech Island. A group of fishermen are hauling in the day's catch of fish. Business is looking up.
Hii uvuvi wa bahari imenisaidia kwa sababu baba yangu hakuwa na shamba, hakuwa na mbuzi ama ngamia kunisomesha mpaka nikamaliza.
Turkanas are mostly pastoralists, but here in Longech Island, fishing is the main socio-economic activity, one that has seen people even from outside Turkana County settle here to do business.
The lake has been a life force to many who fish in the lake, both for subsistence and as a means of livelihood. However, the biggest problem for the fishermen in Longech Island has been the use of inappropriate nets and fishing gear, which had led to a decrease of fish and fingerling stocks in the lake. According to Emmanuel Rimati, the fisherman chairman, fishermen in the area had gone to an extent of using mosquito nets in their fishing activities. This, coupled with overfishing, affected the economic earnings of the fishermen since they had no variety and stocks of fish to sell.
Watoto wetu ambao tumezaa sasa angepata hiyo samaki ambao tulikuwa tumeendelea kukamata hiyo. Ushauri sasa hapa badala angalia hivi hii watu akiua kitu kama mwaka 5 hivi hii vitu itaisha. Ushauri mbari nyingine samaki imeisha. Hii sasa hii bari ndio ile yote inategemea.
In order to empower the fishermen to better and profitably utilize the lake, the Agency for Pastoralist Development conducted a 2-year training program that educated the fishermen on proper fishing methods.
We started working with the fishermen in Kalokol in the year 2012 with funding from ACT, and we did a program called Changieni Rasilmali, CRM. And the main objective of the program was actually to sensitize fishermen in Kalokol and the neighboring beaches on the issue of sustainable management and utilization of the Lake Turkana resources, that's the fish.
Elimu nyingine ambayo pia tuliweza kupata ni kwamba tusiwe tukivua penye samaki usalia, kama hapa kwetu ni Ferguson Gulf. Sasa tulipata pia elimu kuhusu hiyo Gulf, sababu hapo ndio sehemu ambayo samaki usaana.
The training included education on legal practices, including beach sunning and broodstock preservation, as well as controlled fishing to prevent overfishing, as cited in the Fisheries Act.
According to the Fisheries Act, the right size of the fishing gear is 5 inches, so that when you catch a tilapia fish, it has to be that size of my palm and beyond. But if you fish with using a net of 2 inches or 3 inches, 4 inches, it means that you end up catching a small fish, what we call fingerlings.
Once ukivua mchana, usiku hatutafua. Kwa sababu kuna vitu vingi itafanyika usiku. Tukivua hata usiku kuna vitu kama uwizi wa samaki itaendelea. Pia tukasema hiyo ni mzuri kwa sababu itasaidia pia bahari kutunza samaki yenye iko kwa bahari.
The interventions are slowing paying off in terms of increased fish stocks in the lake, as well as increased attention by the communities on how the lake resources are utilized. However, challenges abound for this promising business here in Lake Turkana. With hardly any refrigeration available and only rough dirt roads to take the catch to market. The sure way of making an income from fishing is to dry each day's haul. Middlemen, who don't always offer the best prices to the fishermen, process the fish by smoking and drying them on the shores of the beaches.
Utusaidia tu ile tu kupata ile chakula na tu ile pesa kidogo ambayo si kitu ya kusaidia mtu kabisa, kwa sababu kuna vile kuna shida ya barabara, hakuna wanunuzi wengi wanakuja pande ya kwetu, bei ni mbaya, wachuuzi ni wachache. Sasa hiyo yote inachangia bei ya hii samaki kuwa kidogo.
A sizable number of the farmers has actually changed and they have now shifted to proper and legal fishing methods. But the problem with the fishing is that people keep on migrating in and out. Today you will find people migrating from Lower Rangak because there's starvation there, and they come to Kaloko to look for space to do fishing. You'll find people from other places like Kalapata, maybe they are hit because of hunger, or people from Nakwamoru, they have been hit by raids, all their animals have been taken, so for survival they go to the lake. Now, that new group again is now what needs to be trained, you know.
Should the challenges be mitigated for these empowered fishermen, it shall then be only good things coming for those who bait. Sharma Manyi for KTN in Longech Island, Turkana County.
Right, so we are just about to take a break, but Checkpoint is coming up, and we're talking about what happened in Migori County. Was it freedom of expression, or did it border on political intolerance and disrespect to the president? My guests are seated and ready for that discussion. Very quickly, Boniface, you think it was freedom of expression? You agree with what they did?
Yes, I do. Article 37 of the Constitution gives them the right to assemble, to picket, demonstrate, and even throw a shoe petition to the president.
Okay. What are your views on that? Do let us know. The hashtag we're using after the discussion is Checkpoint. Keep your thoughts coming in. We'll be right back after the break.
Up on KTN Weekend Prime, a discussion.
Checkpoint today talking about the president's trip to Migori and what happened thereafter. Was it freedom of expression or was it political intolerance? Please do weigh in on Twitter at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Acquire. The hashtag we're using tonight is Checkpoint 22155, our SMS number. We'll also do tonight, let me introduce you to my panel. We have Makodingo Washington, who's a political analyst. Dr. Makodingo Washington, excuse me, welcome to the program. We have Omingo Magara, who's the chair of Multi-Party Democracy of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. He's also in PDP and was there and will tell us firsthand what happened. We have Boniface Mwangi, who's an activist, and aptly so, because what we're talking about today is whether activism went too far last week in Migori. Let's start off with your views on Twitter. Ngunjiri Wambugu says, so Boniface Mwangi believes the Katiba allows people to throw shoes at the president. I'm changing channels, no offense. We urge you to stay on and listen to the discussion until the end. He's changing channels now. You're losing me a viewer today.
No, listen, Gonjiro Mbogo, it was a shoe petition. They have a right to do that. So the Migori people, paid or not, had the right to express themselves, and that's the way they did.
So there's some notes written on the shoe, Bonnie, saying this is what we want.
No, you see, it's an insult to say that we are not pleased with the way you're behaving as a president. We are not happy of your appointment in the cabinet. We're not happy that you're ruling this country like you're elected by one part of the country. And so the Migori people are very courageous. So they utilized this document fully. The president is a private citizen as well. Listen, he's a private citizen as well. So you have a right to heckle, petition, it's not an offense to heckle the president.
Okay. Makodingo?
Actually, it is an offense to heckle anyone.
No, it's not an offense.
The problem with activists like...
Tell him to quote the law.
Like Boniface is
that
they
quote the law.
They quote the Constitution partially.
Uh-huh.
Article 24 of the Constitution limits fundamental rights and freedoms. Yeah, and it says in 24(1), I think D, that when you're interpreting the Constitution and even when you are looking at the document, rights and freedoms must be enjoyed in a manner that doesn't prejudice other people's fundamental rights and freedoms. I have the right to assembly, yeah, like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That right cannot be infringed by someone expressing their own right of freedom of expression or whatever it is. If you don't like me, stay at home. Don't come to a function that I have organized and heckle me. And if you want to heckle, declare your intent early enough, like they do in the civilized world.
So you get arrested.
Declare your intent early enough and stay. We will prepare for you a cordon where you can carry placards and shout the way you want. But allow me to address my people, the people who are actually there, to watch and listen to me.
I beg to respond because I've heckled a president before, Kibaki.
And it's gotten you arrested.
Failed. Frederick tried to heckle Kibaki as well.
Jailed, actually.
He failed. And I was acquitted by the court. Frederick was acquitted by the court because it's not an offense. I've been to court for heckling a president and I was in jail because it's not an offense. The Migori people cannot go to state house to heckle the president. The only place they could have found the president was in Migori where he came.
Okay.
And let me tell you, heckling is a fundamental right. You're not given by the state. And you have to...
Where is this right for heckling?
Listen.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
Where is it?
I was saying this. If you have a petition to present to the president and the only place you could find him is at a rally, you have a right to go there.
And heckling was the way to go about it. But let me stop you there, Bonnie, just a moment, because there was someone who was there and witnessed it all, and that's you, Omingo.
Thanks, Yvonne, for granting me this opportunity to share my personal first-hand experience at Migori when I visited. But first and foremost, I expect in this forum we engage with tolerance yet again, so that we don't go the other way, so that if I've got a flaw, please allow me to express myself. So let's not talk at each other, but of course engage. Now, as a party leader of People's Democratic Party, I attended Migori function that was very, very well attended. Indeed, the president was still very well at
he was indeed at the beginning, yes.
At the beginning, yes, at Sony. Actually brought in some relief to farmers who had not been paid for about 6 months of the proceeds. And he, for Sony Sugar, he only brought about 500 million shillings, not to develop anything else, but to pay farmers to take kids to school. He had several other issues that he presented. And I think to discount the fact that the president is ruling like he's the president of one section, that is a section that never gave him vote. But I want to say this, from the onset, what happened in Migori is really unpalatable. It cannot be accepted in modern society anywhere else.
All right.
In fact, you don't heckle a guest enough. It's actually an African.
Okay, all right. Omingo, you're the party leader of PDP.
Yes.
Okoth-Obado governor comes from your party.
My party, yes.
And there was also the sentiment that it was actually he was the one who was targeted for this and not the president, and was trying to embarrass him in front of the president. Why do you think he's so unpopular?
Far from it. I can tell you, the crowd that received the president was very warm. Indeed, even the president came in and sat at the last tail end of the functions, where a few, about 150 youths sagged into the stadium to come and disrupt the function, which was otherwise very, very well organized. But let me say this. It is not true. There could have been, of course, everybody else who has gone through an election has got enemies. People who lost painfully, or as it were. Because you remember, Obado has been in court until the Supreme Court.
So in your opinion, Okoth-Obado is well loved by the people in Migori?
That is a grassroots man. That's how come he won outside ODM in PDP.
That
I can state with
I was in Migori 3 weeks ago. I was doing a study on the impact of devolution on peace and security. So I got to talk to a lot of people, including rural folk. I was in a place called Kadim, which is in Yatike constituency. And Obado is actually very liked. In fact, I could actually bet that if an election were held today, he could actually win the governorship again. Now, it is true there was a contest, and Migori is perceived to be an ODM area. Yeah, in fact, I've had allegations that one of the members of parliament might have participated in, disrupting the rally, which is understandable because that member of parliament happens to have had a spouse who was defeated, who was a running mate to the governor, who was defeated.
Right.
It is understandable. What is not understandable is how they went about it. Now, I'm told Boda he has issues with Boda riders. But between the place, the staging area for the border riders and Obado's office is 150 to 200 meters away. I mean, we haven't heard that they have stormed the governor's office to go and make noise and throw stones at him and throw shoes at him.
But they chose to do it when the president
But they chose to do it when the president.
Okay.
It was the president. Let's say this.
So for you, the target was the president, not the governor.
We spoke about the farmers being given money by
Yes,
the president.
yes.
And there was a tweet by the president that they have given farmers 1.1 billion shillings to be paid.
To offset, yes.
They were not given money. It was a loan. Uhuru needs to understand when he goes to wherever he goes to and gives out money from the government of Kenya money, that is actually a loan, he should actually state the facts. So when he said that he gave farmers money, it was not given.
No, I think...
Yes, let Omingo talk about this and what he was actually there to do.
I said, let us back our argument with facts, not hearsay that have been fed by people who are not on the ground. Basically what we are saying is, this money was outside from the development levy that is supposed to revamp and develop the sugar sector. That was not alone, it was a grant given, and from the time on, the president said, from now, we'll have to increase the sugar prices to be able for the sugarcane farmers to be paid, because the sugarcane price has now been improved courtesy of the blockage of the illegal sugar. So the strategies are there in place.
The CS Agriculture said the money is a loan to be paid back on 5% interest.
Yvonne, I think there is something we should not miss the point. The discussion wasn't the sugar sector.
Right.
When the president went to Migori, he went to launch a 7 billion shilling global fund project, that covers malaria, TB, and
treated
other
mosquito nets and that sort of thing.
Insecticide-treated mosquito nets. I have said this before. When my first posting as a pharmacist was in the Migori District Hospital. I worked there for 6 months. In Luo Nyanza, and in Migori specifically, 70% of the people who come to the hospital, sometimes more, are coming there because of malaria. Malaria is the single biggest issue in Luo Nyanza.
All right, and just to hold that thought, and yet for that on social media, everybody said, but he went there to give mosquito nets. In fact, he deserved to be heckled because of that.
Work. You see, let the governor distribute mosquito nets and do other things.
And what would be so wrong with the president distributing the mosquito nets himself?
He should focus on national matters.
Now, this is where these people miss.
I have a problem with the president for one issue. My biggest issue here, we have 2 GRC report, which hasn't implemented. The president has become a socialite. He's everywhere. Only see him on Twitter and Facebook. He has to remember he's not the first socialite. We had President Moi, who was on radio, TV, newspapers every single day. So he's trying to catch up. Let me tell you, by the way, being busy doesn't mean you're productive.
Okay.
Just because he Tumbi tweets for the president doesn't mean the president
we are missing a point.
We are missing a point. We'll get Tumbi here for right of reply. We're missing the point.
There's a point we're missing. In ITN, the mosquito nets have been with us for a while now, supported by Global Fund and other partners. The thing is, uptake is still very low, mostly because there isn't supporting structures on the ground to actually get people to take mosquito nets. There isn't sufficient publicity to actually get it out there. The president coming up, to declare this a national policy mobilizes the entire provincial administration structure and everyone else in government to actually increase uptake. Because the problem isn't that they are not there. The nets are there. The uptake is very low.
Okay.
We needed this high profile.
Can I say this? No. I think
in one line. Tell the president to take a photo in his bedroom with a mosquito net, and you shall all use mosquito nets.
No, I think come on. I think Yvonne, I don't think there's a way to engage intellectually.
Right.
And of course, we are in national television that's being watched by everybody else. I will expect civility, decorum to anybody else. And I remember, let me quote here. My brother's freedom starts where mine ends. Therefore, we must draw a line. President Uhuru is not there to defend himself. Let's talk about facts. What I'm saying here is, what happened in Migori can not only be an issue for anybody else to digest. It was only a primitive act which must be condemned by every civilized person.
All right, listen to this, Omingo Magara. There's a tweet here from Omar Black. He says, they sent a message that they are not happy, or that we are not happy and contented with how he is running the public service.
It's not primitive.
And then you say it's primitive, but this is what he's saying, that they were just expressing themselves.
What we are saying here is, in here, there is freedom of expression which must not be insulted. You may not like Uhuru for whoever he is, but there is an office of presidents that must be respected by all who respect institutions which would pretend to be protecting, at the same time raping them. You realize, please, You realize some people say we respect institutions, but they go to podiums and say Parliament is a bunch of guys who are not principled. And how do you respect institutions and rep them down
let's talk very quickly about that freedom of expression and how to then just say, look, Mr. President, we are not happy. Let's come to you, Makodinga, and we'll come to you, Boniface, in a moment. How would you think would be the best way if there were people within in Migori who are not happy with the president or the governor, as it were, because at this point that seems to be an issue of debate? What would be the best way to tell him, Mr. President, we're not happy with 1, 2, 3?
There are several ways. One, organize your own rally and heckle and shout as much as you want. Two, we've seen this. I mean, watch news, CNN, whatever, international news. Even in the US, you don't find hecklers in the middle of the crowd in the front row, heckling and throwing things at the president. It happened once, but it was a journalist who was holding a place of trust. You will find that there is a cordon. In fact, they identify themselves very early before anyone else shows up. They identify themselves, they have placards, they're demonstrating, and they'll put a cordon. And you can make your noise, you'll probably get your airtime as well. But within the confines of the area, that there is a rally to. Let the people who are going there be people who actually want to listen to the president, or people who like him or his supporters. Now, we've seen this happen before. In Kamukunji, I think there's a presidential candidate who addressed goats. If he has no support, if there are no people who want to listen to him, don't go there. Let him address an empty field. But when you go to somebody's rally or to a public function, if you don't want to listen, just keep quiet. Mama, probably. You could probably even mama, but don't throw shoes and projectiles and seats.
And speaking of throwing shoes, Boniface, I know when we talked about this earlier, you even referenced that incident with President Bush that took place in 2008.
That was a shoe petition. Even the Migori people did a shoe petition.
And what exactly is a shoe petition? You might want to define that.
What he's talking about, Makodingo, is intolerance. I've organized protests in this country, notified the police, went to the street and was tear gassed. And it was supposed to be, you see, my fundamental right is not given by the state. I'm born with it. So if the only place I could find the president was in a rally, I'll go to a rally and heckle the president and have him hear me out. If Kenya was a mature democracy, actually the president would actually say, can I listen to what they have to say? In this country, you can never find TNA and court supporters meeting, because if they meet, they're going to clash and kill each other. My only concern is, if you can allow someone who has been, like you can allow someone like Moses Kuria to be in parliament because of his hate speech, why can't you allow someone in Migori to throw a shoe?
But those, I'm not sure that those two comparisons.
Because Kuria has a platform for intolerance, social media, he can go to a TV station.
So in your case, Bonnie, then two wrongs make a right?
No. I think the people of Migori had no other platform to let the president hear them unless it was that political rally. And don't tell me to organize my own rally. If the president is there, I hope that people who are watching today have gotten courage from the Migori people, that when you go to a political rally and there's a politician and you do not agree with them, please heckle.
You have a right to, but not exactly
of this discourse, Yvonne, you really need to put us in perspective, because there's a difference between personal hatred of a person in the name of Uhuru and the president.
Do you think Boniface doesn't like the president?
I think it's something personal.
Do you think he hates him?
As much as violence. Let me say this. If civility is anything to go by, which I believe this is a young man who grew with the computer age. If something that was done 45 years ago on 25th of October 1969 can be repeated in the same choreographed manner, I can tell the president stood tall by actually sitting down, calming them down and sitting down, asking them after they have finished, can I now engage my crowd? And the people said, yes, engage our crowd. Who is more civil than the other?
All right, but let's talk about this for a minute and put this in perspective, because this incident, obviously, excuse me, you're referencing what happened before, but not only that, even Raila himself has gone to other parts of the country and has not exactly been welcomed well. Let's have some focus and some way forward with you, because this is something that happens everywhere. If you have somebody from court that goes into a Jubilee stronghold, there'll be some hostility and vice versa. What's it going to take for us to get to that point where one person can go into another's support area and still, address a rally in peace?
I believe in the growing democracy. If we were to present ourselves ideologically and sell our ideas to Kenyans, such issues of inter-clan tribal fighting would be there. The problem is, when somebody sees Yvonne coming to an area which I perceive to be the godfather, I am threatened. And you can see that threat blows up to the extent that I don't want, that is the highest level of intolerance, that my home turf is being attacked. Why? We lack ideologies. We want to hibernate behind our tribal cocoons to be able to survive political political issues. What we are saying here is, time has come where the likes of my brother here should engage anybody regardless of where they come from with tolerance. And if you want to express yourself, there are several ways. You have MCAs, you have women reps, you have MCAs, you have members of parliament, you have governors, senators, and everybody else. And there is even a provision where they are trying to raise signatures for the referendum. That's a statement to give the president. You must not, again, be violent. Because what we're saying, the recipe that we almost walked into 2007, we haven't learned lessons.
All right.
And it's I think,
and it's
a dangerous way to work.
As a recipe for going forward. I want to ask you something, Makodingo. I was talking to someone who said, well, the president seems to have opened himself up to this kind of treatment. Case in point, he's in his attempts, and perhaps, many would laud him for that, to demystify the presidency. He's now that open man that, you feel like you can relate to him. He's on Twitter, he's on social media, and in so doing, if he opens himself up, then he should be open to not just praise, but criticism as well.
There is nothing wrong with the president being criticized. There's probably even nothing wrong with him being heckled, as long as it doesn't interfere with his meeting. There is everything wrong with somebody throwing a shoe, because that is a violent action, and violence under whatever pretext cannot be accepted. I mean, it's not acceptable. Now, the president opening himself up is probably the best thing that has ever happened to us. We had the president was shrewd in mystery, and nobody really knew what was going on. Remember, the president is a servant of the people of Kenya. We put him in office. It doesn't make sense that we put him there and then he turns around and is not even accessible.
All right. Now you've put him in office, and he's the person that, and the presidency is supposed to unite the country.
Yes.
Does it say something that perhaps that has not been achieved way over a year after the last general election? Do you think we're still
let me tell you,
widely
Yvonne,
split?
the cancer is one. People are living in past elections. I lost election.
Why doesn't the president be the one that says he's going to unify the country?
People are desperate to grasp this chance because it's almost flying away from them. If I lost elections and I'm up here, it was not fair. But I must move on. What I'm saying here is people are desperate to get that power because time is running out. And I'm saying the biggest cancer some of us have is living in the past. And I've told a few of them, if you live about the past elections and you lost by 10 votes, trust me, in the next elections, you lose by 20. Morgan Tsvangirai of Zimbabwe is an example. Unless, and let me tell you today, Uhuru became a statesman in Migori. Opening up, reaching out to people who either are hostile to him is more of a unifying factor. And we are saying, those who are even shouting loudest are those ones who are outside Migori County. My brother here has worked there and they know the pain out there. The president has felt that and is going to launch that matter. It may not have been his own function, but he said, as a symbol of unity, let me put my impression on here.
And he went,
what happens?
And he went ahead
anyway.
Boniface, let's talk about this shoe petition. Seems to be a new term that we will now add to our lingo from tonight on Checkpoint. And, I want us to reference that you have made, reference to as well, and that's with Bush. And I think we have a clip of that, if we can just play that for a moment. The journalist who did that faced the law.
Was arrested because they don't have the right to do that in Iraq, but they have the right to do that in Kenya.
And we're still hard pressed to see where that is.
Where is this right? That you must be violent.
Okay, all right. Okay. Let's give him a chance. Okay, carry on, Bonnie.
You spoke about representation. I said you have MCAs, you have governors, senators. Just because I have a representation in parliament, or whatever it is, does not take away the right for me to express myself. I still have a voice, and if I feel like I'm the best person to express myself, let me do that. When you were kids, you were spanked with a shoe. So maybe the guys thought,
so you're saying we should be spanking the president?
Need a spanking. No, maybe someone thought, let me throw this.
All right, here's a tweet from Max Shem. Says the president deserved the shoe. In fact, he can't solve a problem with such a solution. Those are some of the comments that are being made here. Your arguments. Many people are having issues with your arguments.
Let's do it some more, because he spoke about tribalism and how we're stuck in the past. Why are we stuck in the past? It's because of our leaders. Because the only thing that Raila Odinga is doing and Uhuru Kenyatta is referendum and politics. So yes, Migori is actually a development trip, but because we have been living in this political arena for so long, I think for the only way to diffuse this political tension and all these things is for Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta to sit down. They spoke about, he asked for dialogue.
And he did.
He was denied dialogue.
The president has indeed reached out in some way or another.
What God wanted was actually a national dialogue which they were denied. Now we're going to referendum. And the problem is we're going to be dragged into this back and forth issue till 2017. Why can't Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga put country first and come together and agree?
Can I ask a question? Right. Can I ask a simple question? Surely, if we have been living in the past, I mean, if you want to live there, then don't use computers. Why have we evolved? That we have been living in the past, therefore we must continue throwing stones and rebelling other people who don't belong to our tribe. I think that's utmost intolerance, and liberation that we fought for was not for purpose of splitting the country. It was for mutual connectivity and a bonding in the nation. And I think the president, what was doing was noble. Right. And I can tell you, he got more admirers before he went to Migori.
I have a question for him. I have a question for him.
As we wind up,
who's dividing our country? Is it Kenyans or politicians? Because you spoke about ideology and lack of ideology. Who lacks ideology? It's the politicians who have formed political parties that lack ideology.
Boniface, some would say it is also the Kenyans who elect those politicians who themselves lack the ideology.
But these guys, because you see, when you're a leader, you have followers. And you have been misleading your followers. Okay. I blame the leaders.
Are you misled now the way you're thinking one way? Is one side of the coin.
Gentlemen, I need us to wind up the conversation and to just have a conclusion as to the way forward in terms of unifying the country. It's a sad case when one person can go to one region and not be accepted and then to another region, vice versa. Either way, whether it's Raila going to a TNA stronghold or somebody going to a CORD stronghold, either way, we need a way forward with this. Makodingo, your final comments.
No, I think we need to be more tolerant, but our politicians also need to realize that we can't campaign for 5 years. I mean, it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable venture. And it is not that the rest of the country is not tolerant. I remember going with Raila to Nyeri in January 2013, and the town was at a standstill for 6 hours. They were there, they just wanted to see him, they were listening, they didn't mind the traffic for a whole 6 hours. And when he left, they didn't vote for him. I think he got like 250 votes in the whole of Nyeri County. But for me, the fact that even though they didn't like him, even though they knew they were never going to vote for him, they still gave him the chance, the opportunity to express himself and to be heard.
And that should be accorded to all politicians.
It has to be accorded to everyone across board, irrespective.
All right, thanks, Makotengo. Omengo?
Yeah, what happened in Migori is regrettable. Not acceptable anywhere in any democracy or any civilization. 2, we need to be tolerant and accommodate each other, because where your freedom starts where mine ends, and we must draw those parallels. The bottom line of the matter is, let's give each other a hearing, so that if you don't convince me, please walk away. You're not going to be compelled to vote for me if you don't like me. People are saying, oh, this is joblessness and idleness of youth. Do we have a confine of helplessness and youth unemployment in that region? The answer is no. It's a culture we must break and say, we belong to this country. Raila went to Embu the other day, after Migori. He was received well. So we are saying, other people must be civilized, all of us should be.
Okay, all right. Boniface?
I think tolerance is a very good word and a very good thing. And I salute the Migori people because of what they did. And I salute the tolerance of the presidential security for not drawing out their guns or shooting anyone. That was very commendable. And the president for being tolerant because he did not insult people. But I hope that the Migori people are going, this is a very sacred document. And the Migori people have shown us the way to go about it, because I heckled a president and I failed. They heckled and they succeeded. That was very brave.
We'll talk about how you...
I don't know the gauge of success.
What is your gauge of success?
That's a new terminology of success.
He has a very fluid way of gauging success.
I salute your courage.
Indeed, and you have indeed created a new lingo, like I said. Mwangangi Kioko on Twitter saying the shoe petition. That'll now be the hashtag as we move forward.
It's a pre-petition petition.
Throw a shoe at me and I'll deal with you thoroughly.
Using the same law. Using the same law here.
Okay, thank you very much for your time and for discussing this, and we were able to discuss this hopefully without shoes being thrown in the studio, so I thank you gentlemen for that. We'll continue to take a look at your feedback, not just on Checkpoint but also on our special coverage of After the Siege, 1 year on after Westgate. Do stay with us for more on that. All right, it's time to relax in our bulletin right now after all that heated debate on Checkpoint. Now, English is a very strange language. For instance, if certain phrases like kill time or shower with gifts are taken literally, then the results can be quite disastrous. Just ask President Uhuru Kenyatta. But as Wilson Buru tells us, politicians have a lot to learn from KTN News anchors. Here's this week's episode of Mock the Week.
The 37th week of the year. What a strange week this was. Where to start? Oh, I know. Let's go to Migori, where President Uhuru Kenyatta wanted to shower the residents with gifts which included more than a few mosquito nets. But he was to soon find out that the phrase shower with gifts in this part of town is normally taken seriously and quite literally. The president and his team, which included the governor, believed that the residents of this area needed to protect themselves from the malaria-infested insects. It then kind of turned out that these fellows, in return, believed that the president looked like he needed some extra pairs of shoes and chairs, and they gladly offered him their